So for those of you who don't know, a flame war is what happens when two nerds get into a heated debate about something that is utterly irrelevant to anyone else in the world that matters. Now, being a nerd myself, there's one topic that I know is the biggest issue when it comes to flame wars,
which is the Star Wars Empire versus the Star Trek Federation. You know, nerds have argued about this and debated this for a long time. Who would actually win? Which one's better? Well, I'm pretty confident that I think I have the answer. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that's okay. That's why it's called Flame War. Let's just start with the Empire. Now, you think the Empire in its prime, first thing that comes to mind is the Death Star. Now, this is definitely a game changer in terms of war. I mean, it's literally a planet killer. Just one push of a button and a whole world is blown up. How would the Federation deal with something like that? Well,
while it's true that the Federation doesn't have anything like the Death Star in it, they have dealt with weapons of mass destruction that were planet killers many different times before. In Star Trek II, they had the Genesis device, which was originally built to bring to life a dead planet, but if you shot it at a planet that already had life on it, it would wipe it all out and replace it with new life. So it could be used as a WMD. There was, in the 2009 Star Trek, there was red matter, which could absorb an entire planet that destroyed Vulcan. So they have had a lot of experience in dealing with weapons of mass destruction before.
In Star Trek Nemesis, Sinron, I think his name was, Sinron, or a young Tom Hardy, whatever his name was, he was going to come to the Earth and he was going to use some kind of virus to kill everybody. So the Federation is not unfamiliar with dealing with weapons of mass destruction, and you got to think, yeah, if the poorly equipped and not very clever rebels are able to figure out a way to blow up the Death Star, you can be sure that, you know, the super brainiacs of the Federation would have been able to figure it out. But on the other hand, the Empire does have the advantage of the Sith themselves. They've got Darth Vader and they've got the Emperor. Now this basically, when you think about it and break it down, I mean, sure, it makes each one of those people pretty scary in their own right. But it goes a lot further than that. If the leader of an empire has as the Emperor did, has the gift of being able to see far off into the future and see events that might happen, that's definitely going to help you in a war. You're going to know what to do and what not to do, even though the Emperor's arrogance blinded him in the end so that he couldn't see Darth Vader was about to do this to him. Ouch. But yeah, they can see the future, they can sense people's motives around them, and also it's pretty freaky, it scares people, so you can rule by fear, which the Empire did. The Federation, you think about Star Trek right from the beginning, one of the main characters, or the second biggest character on the show, was Spock. And you know, as a Vulcan, he could do a mind meld, where he could put his hands up on someone's face and his mind would meld with theirs and he'd know everything they know and understand everything that they understand. There's also other types like Councilor Troi in the next Star Trek Next Gen, where she was Betazoid. She could sense people's emotions around them. There's lots of different alien races that can directly read your mind and put their words into your head and even take control of your mind completely. There's even mind-controlling slugs in Wrath of Khan. So, while the Federation doesn't have use of the Force, they do have many members that are aliens that have Force-like powers, which are comparable. So I think these two things would kind of even themselves out. But this also goes right into the advantage that the Federation has, that since they're a federation of many different worlds, they're able to draw from a much larger pool of talent. There's lots of different, just a talent pool, and also lots of different aliens they can draw from, many different worlds.
The Federation has also had a lot of experience dealing with different kinds of people, whereas the Empire just fights off the rebels. The Federation, they've fought the Klingons, the Romulans, the Kardashians, and the Borg. So they've got much more experience in all issues of conflict as well.
However, the Empire is willing to play dirty, and I think this is a big shot in favour of the Star Wars saga, that the Empire is willing to play dirty. In A New Hope, they blow up Princess Leia's home world of Alderaan just because they can, just to show everyone that they can, just as a demonstration, as Grand Moff Tarkin puts it. You know, they don't mind kidnapping and torturing people, like in Empire Strikes Back. They're willing to bend the rules and do whatever is necessary. I mean, the Empire is not even above sacrificing its own men and its own ships when it would help set up some kind of scam that the Emperor has. So that's definitely a big advantage. When you're fighting a force like that, that's a problem. Because the Federation, on the other hand, they're very clearly the good guys, and they've got clear-cut rules of conduct, Starfleet regulation as it is, regarding treatment of prisoners, conditions of when you can attack, when you can't. They'd be kind of fighting with one hand tied behind their back against the Empire, while the Empire has got gloves off. The Star Wars Empire, its function is there for just one purpose, and one purpose only, and that is fighting. No doubt about that. They're a military colossus. And while the Federation is pretty much just ships, we know that the Empire, they've got Imperial walkers, they've got a seemingly endless array of stormtroopers, they've got much smaller ships like TIE fighters. So while the Federation might be better at fighting in a ship versus ship type battle, kind of like submarine warfare, I think that if the Empire went up against the Federation, as soon as the Empire got boots on the ground, it's game over. Because the Federation can't do anything about that. I don't even think they have an army, to be honest. There's one last thing, one key thing that I think really tips this debate over in one direction, and that is beaming. The Federation can beam on and off ships. They can beam people from one planet onto a ship, or from one ship onto another, even plucking people off other people's ships. I think that is a huge, huge advantage. I mean, if the Federation had to blow up the Death Star at the end of Return of the Jedi, they could just beam a nuclear bomb right into the core of the Death Star itself and just let it go off from inside. Or they could even just beam the Emperor himself straight to prison, or even into the vacuum of space. You know, just beam him into the sun, just let him burn. Oh no, Starfleet regulation, you can't. Well, maybe they wouldn't do that. But basically, this is the reason I think that when it came right down to it, Starfleet and Star Trek would ultimately win against the Empire, despite how huge and menacing the Empire is, and like I said, it's a military colossus that plays dirty. I think the intelligence and the diversity, and particularly this beaming issue, definitely the Federation would win. Yeah, they'd outsmart them, and they'd beat them with superior tactic and thinking, and a greater variety of skills. And basically, when you break it down, the two messages of what these two nerd franchises are trying to say, they're saying very different things. I mean, the Star Wars being a war, it's basically just your standard good versus evil storyline, with a little bit of a redemption factor sort of brought in with Darth Vader. Whereas the Star Trek, it's much more a sort of intellectual side of things. I know a lot of non-nerds are going to laugh at that, but basically, I mean, you need to see a few episodes to understand it. Not the movies, more so the episodes, because they cover a lot of philosophical and spiritual, moral, social issues, and because these issues, which might be controversial here in our time, because they're being presented in a time and in a place that's unrecognizable to ours, you're able to look at these issues and sort of analyze them objectively, because it's set in a universe where you don't have any immediate loyalties. So I think that's really clever of Star Trek. And also, it's a constant exploration, not only into these bigger issues, but also an exploration of the human condition. And what does it mean to be who you are, and what makes you you? All these kind of questions. So I think, almost in every way, you know, in the fictional world and also in the real world, Star Trek all the way.